Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, tomorrow people, and welcome to another mint condition Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Today's episode is laced with all the mysteries of Tomorrowland, unravelled to give you a head start on everybody else. So well done you for tuning on in. And who better to tease it all out, connect the dots and link you to a better and brighter future than our very own tech talking think tank. It's Matthew Dickerson.
Wow, I'm a think tank all by myself. That's a bit scary, isn't it? Now, I did do some thinking during the week. I had some fun. Well, I was doing some work, but it was actually, I found it a lot of fun.
Work can be fun.
Absolutely right. And I probably spent way too much time doing what I was doing. It was probably a much simpler answer, but I had an organisation I was doing some work for that wanted to change their email address syntax.
Right.
They're changing, they're growing a little bit. And in the past, they liked the personal view of just first name. So James at domain name. That's lovely.
Right.
That's lovely until you start to grow a little bit and you start to get some duplicates. And so they wanted to get an idea of how much they would grow before they would finally get to the point where they're going to see this being an ongoing issue as they employ new people. And then, oh no, there's a clash of names. We've got two Jameses. We can't have two James at domain name. So then it becomes Jimmy or James 1, or there was all the other ones, and I'm a big fan of consistency. So then you've got lots of different options. Obviously, you've got first name and then second name initial, or second full name, or dot second name, or dot second name initial, or switch it around and have an initial of the surname and then the first name.
And you were going through all the permutations that you could possibly have. Of
Pretty much. But what it came down to was, the first thing was, how many Christian names are there out there? So that start to give us a probability. And then I thought, well, it's silly looking at how many Christian names because there would be thousands easily.
Yeah.
And I thought, let's look at common Christian names. So I did a fair bit of research on that and I came up with 500. So what do you think about that as a number? I'm actually interested here, just a random thought here. So I reckon, based on my research...
So there are 500 common Christian names.
What I would call common Christian names.
Right.
And I did that. First of all, scientifically, I looked at a whole range of frequency of Christian names in society,
Right.
and then watched when the graph started to drop off. So it kind of went along evenly and then started to drop off significantly. But then I also did something
scientific.
Well, I did something a bit non-scientific then. I went through and got a list of, say, if there were 1,000 Christian names, I'd start looking through and go, oh, I haven't heard of that one. Okay, no, there's not 1,000. Then I kept cutting it down.
Yeah, okay.
When I got to, say, 300, I went, yep, I've definitely heard of all those. So then I kept going back, and about 500, I reckon, as I flicked through that list, as I said, I spent way too much time on this. I got this age, I went, so 500. So that was the number I used, subject to debate, of course.
Science takes time, though.
It does. I told my wife that. And then I came up with about 1,000 common surnames. So again, same process. I went
the
through
Smiths
there.
and the Johnsons.
Yeah, well, and then you think about surnames that are a bit out there. Now, we're becoming a much more multicultural society.
Exactly,
so you're getting more surnames that maybe aren't things that you immediately recognise, but they're becoming more and more common.
Right.
And then for the initials, I didn't use 26 letters of the alphabet because I figured there's not a lot of surnames that start with X or Z or Q. Having said that, there are some. Yeah, coming out. But again, it was common.
Up an old phone book, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. So I used 500, 1,023 and then did some simple maths around that. If it was just Christian names and they had 10 people working for them, there's an 8.6% chance that you would have a clash with only 10 people working for you. So they were acceptable.
That's pretty high, I reckon.
It is, that's right. And which is a bit surprising. I think I've talked before about the birthday problem.
Yeah.
So it's the same
in
thing
any
as that.
room, there's
23 people.
23 people.
And you've got a better than even chance that 2 people have a matching birthday.
Yeah.
So it seems
23 people.
Most people think, oh, I've got a 1 in 365 chance, but that's to match your birthday.
Yeah.
But for any 2 people to match in the room, you only need 23 for 50% chance. So it's a good little fun. I play around with that sometimes when I'm doing some talking work, just trying to get people to understand that from a maths perspective. So with 10 employees, 8.6% chance. So it's not many. So as this company grows and they get to 20 employees, suddenly with Christian name only, there's a 31.6% chance there'll be a clash. So that's pretty likely.
Yeah,
so it's pretty annoying. So then I said, let's look at Christian name dot initial of the surname. And it wouldn't matter whether you put dot or no dot in there, but so basically Christian name, then initial of the surname. So that only adds a factor of 23 by my calculations there. But even then at 10 people, 0.39% chance, so pretty unlikely. At 20 people, 1.64% chance. If they grew to, say, 50 people, 10.1% chance. So 10% chance still with 50 people.
So if you're going to create email addresses, you're going to need to be a little bit more creative than just first name, and certainly first name and just the last initial.
Yeah, and depending how big your company is, because part of my philosophy is make it simple, make it consistent, and make it as short as possible.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to give someone a really long, convoluted email address. If you then go to what you see more common in large organisations, Christian name.surname, then you get to say at 10 people, 0.009% chance, so pretty unlikely. But you get to 50 people, 0.245% chance. Even at 100 people, it's 0.985. So it's almost 1% chance at only 100 people. So it's quite fascinating.
Absolutely.
Anyway, good fun. So so there you go. There's some naming syntaxes for your email addresses internally.
And if you have any projects that you'd like Matthew to take on, just email us here at Tech Talk. All righty. Well, in today's episode, we're looking at robots infiltrating the arts. They're teaching piano and showing us up on the dance floor. And we'll check out RoboVacs and how they can hurdle these days. And we'll show you how you can use telekinesis to make things fly. Well, that's what telekinesis is all about, I guess. So that's all waiting for you in the future. But now, here is this middle-aged guy, and I'm going to get all hip and happening with the latest of what all the kids are up on. You may have followed the news from the US about the popular social media app TikTok. Uniquely, this app has been singled out as a threat and subsequently denied to all inside US borders. Albeit for an afternoon, that is. Matt, this was a storm in a teacup, no?
Oh, no, it's a bit more than a storm in a teacup.
Surely caused a lot of angst, though.
It did, and it's actually fascinating. I want to go back for a bit of history on this one as well, because I actually find it fascinating. I hope the listeners will find it fascinating as well, because the dramas all started way back in 2020. So what we're seeing now is a culmination of all of that. But even just to the start of TikTok, it only was introduced to the world in September 2017. So it's not that old.
So it's pretty new,
Yeah, but
I remember it became really big around COVID.
Yeah, absolutely right, where people were putting all sorts of crazy stuff up there. But it seems to me, I'd be pretty proud of starting something in 2017, and here we are in 2025, 1.8 billion users.
Well, it's the app of choice for most youngsters, isn't it?
Absolutely right. And even in America, 170 million users, an average length of time they spend on it per day, 51 minutes. So you can say it's popular. So we go...
That's the average 51. Wow.
Average 51, that's right. So we go back to September 2017. ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, introduced TikTok to the world. And I think they kind of were inspired by Isaac Newton's words from 1675, if I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And they basically took all the best bits of everything else out in the social media world and said, we're going to build an app that takes all those good bits and kill it. And they absolutely did. Obviously, they got everything right. They got their algorithms right.
Yeah.
They were giving people what they wanted. So it went through the roof. And then the US government in 2020 said, oh, this could be a national security threat because the Chinese government could watch people doing silly dances. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they said, but but it seemed to me that they were worried about the Chinese government because ByteDance was a Chinese company. The Chinese government could hypothetically say, we'll just have that data. Thanks very much. We don't look
I'm
at
just
that.
checking on what your search histories are like and all that sort of stuff, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I think it's maybe your details as well, your personal details.
Yeah,
My first thought was, it's public. What's out there on TikTok is public. Do you need to be the Chinese government to say hand it over, or do you just go and open up a TikTok account and start looking at stuff? So I suppose it's more the data that they think is at risk, so that 170 million US citizens with their name, their date of birth, their phone number, their email address, they think that might be of some value to the Chinese government. So Executive Order 13942 was signed by former President Donald Trump in August 2020, and that was to prohibit transactions between US entities and ByteDance. So very specific about ByteDance, right? Unless they sold their US operations to an American company. And Donald Trump, as he does things in a non-subtle way, declared TikTok a national emergency. Forget about wildfires in LA, it's a national emergency TikTok. So when from there, then you had some courtroom dramas, some corporate bids came along. US tech giants wanted to buy the assets, which makes sense. It was a pretty successful company. And critics, of course, said that Trump might have been doing this just to look after some of his mates, which Trump wouldn't do that, of course. No way that would happen. So there was a threat that obviously TikTok would disappear, but then President Trump was no longer President Trump, and former President Joe Biden came along. Executive Order 14034 in June 2021 revoked the previous TikTok position, but they did say, let's get the federal agencies to have a look at all foreign-owned applications, just conduct a review. That seems a bit more rational and sensible than just focusing on
Less
TikTok.
targeted.
It did seem a little bit like that. So from there, December 2022, TikTok was banned from all federal government devices. March 2023, TikTok CEO had to testify before Congress to address data privacy.
Yeah, I've seen footage of that.
Yeah,
it's
that's
quite
right.
an interesting sort of interview.
And then in April 2024, Congress did there were a few steps before this, but the final step was an act that mandated TikTok had to divest itself from Chinese ownership within 270 days. Now, and I even find that strange that a government tells an individual private company you can't be owned by people that are from that country. It just it seems strange to me, but this is a strange world we live in. Of course, ByteDance filed a lawsuit. Solicitors made lots of money during this, and they argued that it violated the First Amendment rights about restricting free speech. So if you're banning this app, it's banning people's ability to put silly dances up.
Yeah.
So the last legal piece of the puzzle dropped. Supreme Court put its stamp of approval on the act on the 17th of January 2025. And so the next night, TikTok started going dark because 19th of January was the deadline.
Yeah.
So before midnight, TikTok started going dark across the US. But then, of course, Donald Trump came along, newly re-elected Donald Trump, and said, hold on.
And got his big biro out and started signing stuff.
And said, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save TikTok. Now,
He had a change of heart, you mean?
well,
That doesn't seem right, but anyway.
It doesn't. But you would have thought that he would have been pleased at something that he started with an executive order back in August 2020.
Yep.
It's come to fruition. Great. We've nailed it now. But of course he said, no, I'm going to save TikTok after I previously said, let's go and ban them. So he said now that you've got 75 days to explore a 50% US-based ownership option. Now, at his inauguration, he had people like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg there. Gee, they might be interested in owning a bit of TikTok. Elon Musk already said, like that Twitter thing, I might buy that. So he bought that. I think 75% of it. So owning a very popular social media app for a Zuckerberg or a Musk might be attractive, and especially given the fact that Musk supported Trump so much in his re-election campaign, it might be, hey, Elon, how about I look after you here, mate, and I'll just do a little executive order and we'll get it sorted so you can then come along and buy a bit of TikTok. I call it the TikTok Tango. It's going all over the place. It is like a dance. It's going back and forth. 75 days, we'll find out what's happened. And I don't know. There's been so many twists and turns in this one. I don't know if I'm ByteDance, whether I really want to give away, or not give away, sell 50%, or who decides the price on that? If I say, sure, I'm going to put a price of $1 trillion on that thing. So, well, that's just silly. Well, I'm trying to buy it, but sell it, but I can't do it. You find some mates of yours to go and buy for $1 trillion. I mean, it seems like it's a very convoluted process.
Absolutely. And I don't know, it's they're worried about TikTok, but I mean, they've got all Google and whatnot who've got hold of people's data as well. And
surely there's so many out there with Facebook and with Twitter and with Google. There's so much data out there with these large organisations. I assume Trump is saying they're okay because they're American-based, so that's all. That means they're good guys, but if they're from China, that means they're bad guys in Trump's eyes. So, it is quite fascinating.
It's so easy to pick Gary Cooper in those old black and white cowboy movies as the good guy, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, and these days we try to put cowboy hats on people and paint them as good guys and bad guys. And
that's right. Yeah. Anyway, it's a fascinating story. I don't know where it will definitely end, but there'll be new twists and turns, I'm sure. This is nowhere near the end of it. We're only halfway through it, I think.
Absolutely. Folks, my biggest problem when I go to play Rachmaninoff on a Steinway is that I just can't get my finger speed on high enough when it gets all prestissimo. You know what I'm talking about? Prestissimo is just so fast and, also I can't read sheet music to save myself. But if I had an ounce of talent and about 20 years more of piano playing experience, then I reckon I still couldn't get my finger speed fast enough. And that is without a little bit of robotic assistance. Matt, piano lessons are about to get a robotic upgrade, I hear.
It does sound like a cool concept, doesn't it? Just strap on a little bit of exoskeleton and you can be playing.
And all of a sudden you're doing a flight of the bumblebee.
That's right.
Like you wouldn't believe, yeah.
Exactly right. So it's something where, and I do question sometimes that we do things in technology just because we can.
Yeah.
And this seemed like one of those because the people they're working with here are trained pianists with at least 10,000 hours of experience and all started playing the piano before the age of 8. So that rules you and I out, I think.
Right,
just. Yeah, give us another 30 years.
So perhaps 20 years was a little bit of an underestimation about exactly how much experience I need.
And so what they did was they said, we're going to get you to play the piano better by using an exoskeleton. They were given a piece to practice for 2 weeks. And you can imagine someone with that many hours experience and been playing the piano basically their whole life would take a piece for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, be pretty proficient at that piece. Mm. But in some of the faster parts, they'd reached a bit of a plateau.
The prestissimo part.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm very impressed. And so they then said, strap on this little exoskeleton. It will make your fingers play those parts at the speed they should, or maybe even faster than that. And we'll just do it for 30 minutes. Then take off the robotic device, and lo and behold, they could play faster. The next day, they could play faster. So it seemed like it was not just straight after or not just while they were wearing it, but it actually became part of their muscle memory, perhaps, if that is a real thing. I'm not sure if it is, but yeah, so it became part of that. So you go...
I reckon it is, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I just want to, like, having like this thing strapped to your fingers and then trying to work it... Having it work faster, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It just, in my mind boggles over this because I reckon that'd create all sorts of confusion. I think
the idea was that they just relaxed their hand and they let the exoskeleton do its job on their hand. And then after that, took it off.
The exoskeleton knew exactly what keys to press.
Exactly right, yeah. And the penis only had to have their hand in the right location. But even that didn't really matter that much because their fingers were just moving. That was it. Their fingers were going crazy.
You could go floppy fingers.
Essentially,
right.
Because I think you're right. I think you'd be fighting against the exoskeleton, trying to keep up with your fingers.
Yeah.
So, and anyone... It's not a visual medium we've got here, but my fingers are going very fast here. But I think that's the idea is you relax them and then when you take it off, you've kind of got used to the fingers. Now, I started thinking, that trick you used to do when I remember as a kid and did to my kids, where you'd stand in a doorway and you'd push your arms out against the doorway for 20 seconds or 30 seconds and then you'd walk out of the doorway and your arms would float. My arms are weightless. Look at that.
That's right.
So it might be something like that where you just had your fingers going in a motion that they become accustomed to and then you take off the exoskeleton and then away they go.
Yeah, right.
But I started to think, well, big deal. I see some fantastic pianists and I've been at some wonderful concerts with pianists that look like they're unbelievable. But is it really essential that we can train them just to be that little bit faster via an exoskeleton? And I think the whole process...
Well, if you're trying to impress a master of the piano, then yes. But if you're trying to impress me, that's a lot easier.
Well, probably right. And maybe if I'm trying to impress the master, I say, sit on that side of the piano where you can't see my fingers. I'll just strap this on very quickly. But you go a couple of steps further than that. So, yes, this is all very interesting from a piano perspective, but where it becomes much more useful in society is when you start to do things like rehab of individuals, someone that might have had an injury. It might have been a brain injury. It might have been a hand or an arm injury, and then trying to get their fingers not to play the piano at an absolutely wonderful speed, but to actually get to the point where they're using their hand just to pick up something.
Yeah.
So that's the first step. And then they started looking at using it for example, surgeons, something where you need very precise movements. You don't want your surgeon going very fast. You just take your time on that, will you? But you want very precise movements or maybe very stable movements. So they found any profession where you needed to use your hand, it was able to basically train your hand, take it off, and then you could keep using your hand. So no, don't strap it on while you're having the operation, but strap it on while you're doing the practice, take it off, and then your hand will remember some of those movements. Right. So a whole range of things, but the piano does sound fascinating, and I would love to see it. I haven't seen a video of it, but I'd love to see someone's hands going very fast with this robotic hand on, exoskeleton hand on, actually making it move for them. I think it'll be fascinating.
Amazing world we live in. So I guess it makes sense. As internet shopping has become a norm, and with Australia Post sending out alerts to pick up parcels now commonplace, I guess it makes sense that scammers would latch onto that opportunity. Matt, it seems that Facebook Marketplace users have a special need to keep their guard up.
Well, at the moment, absolutely right. But today it's Facebook Marketplace. Tomorrow it'll be eBay. The next day it'll be something else. So you have to keep your guard up all the time. But the latest one is actually that serious that Australia Post has issued a warning. They've actually gone out of their way to say, just for everyone's record, we are not doing this. We do not use QR codes. This is not us, which is unusual because sometimes a company will say, let's leave it alone because it almost feels like we're advertising the process or making our company look bad by actually saying to everyone, this isn't us, because then sometimes people might associate that scam with that particular company. So it's a serious move, I think, when a company comes out and says this isn't us. So what happens in this particular one is that scammers pose as buyers. They go to Facebook Marketplace, is the one of choice at the moment, but could be anywhere. They create a fake profile, and then they start interacting. Oh, yes, James, I like that sideboard that you're trying to sell. It looks quite good. What conditions is it in and why you're selling it, and a few things like that. So you know you're dealing with someone that's real because they're asking a few simple questions, and then they might haggle with the price a little bit. 200, you're dreaming. I'll give you 150 for it. Oh, how about 180?
Sticks, yeah.
That's right. So then after they do all that, they then say, sure thing, I've agreed to buy it. I've just paid you, James. Here's the link that you've got to click on to confirm you received the payment before I come and pick it up or before you send it to me or whatever it might be. And you go, okay, he was a nice guy, chatting away to me nicely. And so you click on the link, which is an Australia Post QR code that comes through. You click on that or go to that particular part. And of course it says, just put your details in to make sure we know it's you to confirm your payment. Oh, okay, no problems at all. You put your details in, and of course it's all fake, and you send your details. Sometimes they're trying to get your credit card details. Sometimes they're trying to get your banking details. Sometimes they just want your name, your date of birth, your phone number, just your basic details, enough they can steal your identity. So that's where this scam is going. They're just trying to take all that. Now, again, we talk about this often. The reported scams from social media scams last year in Australia, 58.3 million. But we say it all the time. That's the reported scams. Yeah. How much are the unreported scams? We don't know because they're not reported. But you can imagine if that's the reported number, I would think the unreported number, with no scientific evidence to back me up, would be a larger number because I think people are more likely not to report, to go, oh, I'm embarrassed, oh, it's frustrating, yes, I don't want to waste more time on this, I've just lost $100, it's only $100. But that $100 is being lost by a lot of people for a lot of the time.
Oh, dear.
So keep your eye on it. You just, with all of these, have to be vigilant. Australia Post, Facebook Marketplace today, other various sites and various tools tomorrow, but they're just out there. But this is the most common one. In my experience,
Australia Post just messages to say, you've got a parcel, come and pick it up.
Yeah, it's when they start to say, put your details in, that you start to have some alarm bells. And actually my daughter got one of these. She said, oh, Dad, that one you're talking about the other day, I just got one, and it was Australia Post, put your details in. She wasn't even selling anything at the time. It was just a random thing that just turned up there. So, yeah, you've got to be vigilant with all of that. And I suppose, it sounds sad, but just be suspicious. On the good side, the good news out of all of this is, have you noticed fewer scam phone calls lately? The prevalence of scam phone calls has dropped. Now, that's been from some work by the telcos, but also the scammers are finding it's fairly labour intensive and they're not getting that good a result out of the phone calls. Yeah. So that's dropped off. It's turned to more online stuff, though. They're finding better results from online. So
until we get complacent about phone calls, and then they'll
come back again. That's right. Yeah. You're probably right.
Have you ever heard of geofencing? Now, it's not a term that you'd have much call to drop into a conversation unless, of course, you were a drone pilot. Geofencing is an inbuilt protection that restricts drones from entering particular no-fly zones. Well, one leading drone manufacturer is removing this from their software and leaving the responsibility all up to the pilots. Matt, is that the sound of a can of worms being opened?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the challenge for listeners, is just drop geofence into casual conversation in the next 24 hours.
I was geofencing the other day.
So DJI they are the number one drone manufacturer in the world, 70% global market share, so not too bad. And a little bit of news here, they're Chinese, so of course everything about them would be bad in some people's eyes, but we have lots of stuff that's made in China, so
exactly.
yeah, it's a effective place that does manufacturing. So DJI in the past had geofencing, so in other words, you would be flying along and then it would say, sorry, you can't fly here, and your drone would not go past that area where you weren't allowed to fly. So, for example, around an airport, there's a certain restriction zone. You can't fly around an airport, which kind of makes sense. You don't want to be a pilot flying in a nice A380 with 400 people on board and suddenly there's a drone in front of you that's about to hit your engine or bounce off the nose or whatever. So around an airport.
The White House might be another place.
The White House. And that's when DJI initially implemented their geofencing back in 2015. A DJI drone crash landed on the White House lawn.
That's some bad publicity right there.
That's right. And so DJI said, we'll
Crash
geofence.
landed or was shot down? I don't
Well,
know. Yeah,
one or the other, that's
yes.
right. But the ultimate outcome was
Yes.
on the lawn of the White House, there was a
It's
drone.
a DJI drone.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they put geofencing in place, and I think that was probably a bit of negotiation there with the US. Maybe at the time they said, we're going to ban all DJI drones from America unless you do something about that. So they put geofencing, and I've got a DJI drone, and you fly it around, and I haven't gone anywhere where I'm not allowed to go, but it certainly gives you all the information and the warnings, and it all makes sense to me, and I don't know why you would want to take it away. I don't know what the logic would be to take it away, but they've said, sorry, we're going to remove it now. And it had geofencing around things that could be flexible as well. So if there was a wildfire going, then they could put an extra geofence on there, because there were obviously more planes flying around there with doing some aerial bombing, water bombing, that type
Well,
of
I heard
thing.
in California they're having some trouble with drones being flown up there that
Exactly
shouldn't
right.
have been there.
Yeah, and this is the problem. Since they've removed the geofencing, already there have been some areas, so there's been some military areas where they've had drone sightings. They've had around wildfires, as you said. And there's also been, I thought they were UFOs still, but UFOs are not UFOs anymore. They're now UAPs.
Okay.
So there's been some drone sightings that I would have called a UFO drone sighting, but they're now called UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Okay.
That's the modern term for a UFO. Right.
It still
So-
means the same thing.
Same-
Unidentified, and
That's
it's
right.
flying.
And it's in the air, that's right. So there have been some misidentified UAPs. Likely they've been drones because people now can go anywhere with them. What DJI said, that with regulations advancing, the restrictions are less necessary, which I don't really understand.
Yeah.
If the regulations are advancing, wouldn't you want to enforce them? Are they saying that everyone's now being honest because of that? But I actually think there's an honest mistake here. You get your new drone for Christmas and you get it out and you start flying it around. You don't necessarily read all the rules or know exactly where you can go, and you start flying around. Next thing you know, you're flying in a no-go zone. DJI have said it will still give you a warning, but you can just ignore it. So having people read that warning, you're flying along, warning, whatever, I'll just keep flying, this is good fun. Oh, whoops, I'm in an airport, what do I do now? So
It's clearly a case of like technology outstripping the law that needs to control it.
And maybe the laws and regulations need to have geofencing as a compulsory part of it. Maybe that would make sense. So in general, if you're flying your drone, don't go above 122 metres, and I reckon at that height you can't see it anyway. So if you're just flying around, I mean, you've got the camera there, but you're looking at there and you go, I think there's a little dot up in the air somewhere there. So you can't go above 122 metres. You can't go around government buildings, typically around fires where there's activity, airports, even flying over large public areas where you've got people around. So you can probably fly it over some streets, but if you want to fly it down the CBD or over a beach, there are restrictions on those as well. I don't know all the restrictions off the top of my head. I've relied on the geofencing in my drone in the past. I've really unread all the rules now and look at it. So it could be interesting. I think you'll see some incidents. We'll be talking about this again, I'm sure.
Free Tech Talk book. Here's your chance to grab a free copy of the latest Tech Talk compilation book in 3 easy steps. Step 1. Listen to any Tech Talk episode. Step 2. Leave a review on your favourite podcast app. Step 3. Email a screenshot of your review to freebook@techtalk.digital with your name and address. The first 20 emails received this week will receive a free book. Don't wait. You are listening to this podcast right now. Leave a review on the app you are listening to this on and send that screenshot to freebook@techtalk.digital. Tech Talk, your gateway to the tech world.
Doctor Who fans will be well aware of the easiest way to make good ones escape from an ill-tempered Dalek. Obviously, you just take the stairs. Of course, owners of a robotic vacuum cleaner would also be aware of the same issue. They do a mighty job provided everything is on the one level and there are no bumps. Well, newsflash, we now live in a world that includes robot vacuum cleaners that can go up and down levels. Let's just hope the Daleks don't catch on, Matt.
So that's a good point. It never dawned on me before. So when they're exterminating everything,
When they're chasing you down,
you just go up some steps, or
you've
just
got to find some stairs somewhere.
or
Go
just
to
put a
different
little
level.
step on the ground. Just put a little bit of rubble on the ground there.
Some sort of obstacle.
He was pretty smart, Doctor Who, but he never actually came up with that idea, did he?
Well, the BBC wasn't into like designing sets with stairs in those
Right,
days.
that was probably it. So we are getting much better with our robot vacuum cleaners. And I've had a few different models over the years, and I've found them okay-ish, but sometimes I've had some little issues and there have been some little improvements. But this, to me, is a major improvement. To be able to step up 4 centimetres. So if you've got a little step, if you've got something that might be a little bump between carpet and timber floor, if you've got something that you just want to step over, sometimes you've just got that little piece there that might only be 1 or 2 centimetres that just between
A little
two
trip
areas.
hazard.
A trip hazard, exactly right.
Yeah,
and for a robot vacuum cleaner, it just means it bumps up against it and turns around and keeps going. So the latest one is from Roborock, and they've got the Crevo, Qrevo. How do you pronounce
That'll
that?
do me.
Crevo?
Yeah, well done you.
And don't you like how companies like to say, we're going to create a word that doesn't have a U after the Q?
I know. Yeah, we're going to break some rules in English.
Everyone at school would know the word Qantas by the age of 6 or 7 because U always follows Q, except with Qantas. And I go, what a great way from a marketing perspective. But anyway, off topic, sorry. So the Crevo Edge vacuum cleaner, robot vacuum cleaner, has got a retractable wheel that allows it to scale those. So it'll go along doing its vacuuming. Oh, here's a ledge that I want to get over. And then the wheel comes out and lets it almost step up over that. So it's pretty cool. It does some other cool things as well. It's got a mop and a vacuum in it. And it will obviously detect what the floor is. So if it's a timber floor, a hard floor, I'll use the mop now. If it's got a carpet-like surface, then it'll use the vacuum. Then it's dock. It's got water in there. It takes the clean water out of one reservoir. It takes this dirty water and puts it in the other reservoir, so you can keep doing that. You probably got to, once a week maybe, just go and take the base and empty out that water, put some new water in there, and maybe just empty out the dust that's been collected in the vacuum cleaner itself. So not too bad. The only thing that's a bit scary is the price, which is $2,800 Australian.
How much do you like your robot vacuum cleaners?
I know. And that's okay for the moment because some people will go out and buy that and that'll then create some volume and then that'll bring the price down for everyone. So it'll eventually get the stage where it's affordable. But they certainly are getting better all the time, and there's virtual fences you can put up. I've seen ones like that where you're doing a certain area and you don't want to do another area because the kids have left a puzzle out there. So you just go and put a little virtual fence in, a little device there that stops it from going there. So they are getting better without a doubt. There are some other ones that I've seen. There was one at CS actually that could step up to 6 centimetres. You can't buy that one yet, but it's getting better as well.
Well, 6 centimetres is almost a step.
Almost a step, that's right. I don't know how it would go though upstairs.
Yeah,
because
you've got multiples, and it's a bit wide.
It'd be wider than
okay,
that,
so
yeah.
we're still not having to worry about Daleks getting upstairs and getting this
Not
secret
yet, no. We're
information.
safe from the Daleks. So go upstairs, safe from the Daleks.
So, with all that robots can do, at least they can't dance. Matt, your signature dance floor move is literally the robot, but someone has been teaching these things to move like Hugh Jackman, am I right?
A 40-second dance routine is where we're up to. Now,
goodness.
This is called X-Body 2. It's an AI system designed by some researchers at the University of California in San Diego. Now, it's not a robot itself. It's a AI training system for robots because they figured there are other people out there making robots. There are humanoid-style robots. They've all heard my screaming out for, I want Rosie the robot, the same as the Jetsons, although Rosie had a wheel too, so that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
I want a humanoid robot that does everything that Rosie did, but with legs so I can step over stairs and go up steps. But we haven't got there yet because robots typically are a bit clumsy in their movements.
So we need training devices.
We need training devices to make them smooth and to make the robots work and look like we do because we'll be more
to
acceptable.
Make it look effortless like Fred Astaire.
Exactly right. That would be lovely. we know that robots are great on manufacturing lines, for example, in a factory, because they can do that repeated movement over and over. And we don't care if it looks jerky and stiff, because you're not looking at it for that, you're looking at it for the weld that it does.
For precision, that's all.
Exactly right. So we want identical. But what we're really after, what we're all after, of course, is the humanoid robot that picks up clothes off the floor, puts it in the washing machine, takes the washing out and puts it on the clothesline. All those sort of normal things that we want robots to take care of day-to-day tasks. So Xbody 2 has been used to train other robots. They've taken off-the-shelf robots. They've then said, here are some movements that are human-like movements, mimicking human-like movements to then make them more relaxed or comfortable, or make us more relaxed and comfortable around these movements that they make. And then do things like walk, crouch, waltz with humans, and indeed a 40-second dance routine. Sometimes they'll do just some training on the arms or just some training on the legs, but then they really focus on full body coordination. So this is where we just seem to get more and more specialised with so many things, don't we? If I was building a robot, I'd be thinking I've got to build the robot and also work out how to make it move. But now you'll be able to have companies who will specialise in building robots, and then someone like Xbody 2 can say, we'll now do the training for that robot. So Boston Dynamics, we know, have been doing lots of robotics work. Fantastic. We know Spot the Robot Dog is doing some wonderful work out there in the community. So Boston Dynamics might say, well, we'll just go and build the robot. We reckon we've got that pretty good, but the sequences we've got, they're still a bit clunky. We'll give it to Xbody 2. You go and do the training to make it look like a smooth movement. And Spot, I'm not sure if you've watched some videos of Spot, but Spot is a bit clunky in the way Spot the robot dog moves. It's very...
Walks like a robot.
Yeah, that's right. Walks like a robot. You're definitely right. This might make it walk like a dog, and that's where the training is coming in.
Blurring those lines, one step closer to Blade Runner. Here we come. PFAS. Now, you may have heard of these forever chemicals, a byproduct of the evolution of plastics. Being an important waterproofer, they're also designed specifically not to break down in the environment. And now, surprise, surprise, they are considered an environmental contaminant, and it's even infiltrated some water supplies. But Matt, there may be something of a defence on the horizon.
We're getting there slowly, but these are a major issue. Polyfluoroalkyl.
You've done so well with that.
Good. So you
just got to string it together. Polyfluoroalkyl.
That's right. Thank you. So polyfluoroalkyl substances, so PFAS, in a whole range of things. So we had them in non-stick cookware, had them in cosmetics, had them in waterproof fabrics. One of the areas we see them often in society is they used to be in firefighting foam. And so then you get a local park in a regional location, for example, and they do fire training. So they'll get the guys there and they'll get the hose out and they'll practice with all this stuff. And this is going back decades ago. And of course, it all sits there. It might leak through into the soil. It might get through to the aquifer.
Yeah.
So then all these chemicals are getting into the whole water system.
So, like a fire that's just an urban fire. And so all that stuff just gets washed into a stormwater drain.
Yeah. So they've taken them out of the current firefighting substances, but we're going back. They were used for decades and all this. So they've been found in places like, that's right, in the Blue Mountains, some dams in the Blue Mountains. They've been found in bore water in regional areas in New South Wales as well, because again, they've been able to leak down in there. Now, what do we do about it? Well, we haven't worked out yet how to destroy them. And this is part of the problem. So they're a forever chemical. Yes, great, they're forever. They last forever. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
That was great when you were selling your waterproof jacket. Look at this. It'll resist rain
last you forever.
That's right. And it probably will, but it won't be great in the meantime. What we've found now is that a lot of science has been thrown at the problem of at least removing PFAS from various water supplies. And there have been a few different ways they've been doing that. So one is granular activated carbon, and that's a porous material that traps PFAS molecules. So in a water treatment,
I've heard of granular activated carbon in a lot of different sources. Yeah,
exactly
so
right.
In filters and things.
Yeah, that's right. So you can actually get filters for your home at a small scale, but they're also using that in a large scale in water treatment plants. So it doesn't destroy the PFAS. What it does is it says, look at this sludge over here. This sludge is the PFAS. So now you can just pick that up and put it somewhere else.
And put it in a jar.
Put it in a jar somewhere, a very safe jar with a very good lid on it. So that's one they've been using. Another one they've been using is ion exchange resin. So again, that's about taking the negatively charged PFAS molecules and combining that with a positively charged, and then you get, again, a sludge, I assume it would be, something like that, probably a more technical name for it than that, but that would be something you'd then take it off. You've also got foam fractionation. Slip that one into conversation. And that's bubbling water or bubbling air through water to isolate the PFAS. It becomes a bit of a foam
layer.
Yeah, that's right. And so then you can go and take that off.
Skim that off and dispose of it. Yeah,
so
right.
the Cascade water filtration plant in New South Wales has just had $3.5 million spent on it with a PFAS treatment system. So, and that's the type of money we're probably going to talk about. I think we're going to see more of these across water treatment plants across the state where you're going to need to add some sort of thing on that'll be millions of dollars to basically say we're now taking PFAS out of this, because we're not absolutely sure what it does to humans, but we know it's not good. We think it causes some disruption to our hormones. It causes potentially some immune system problems. Maybe, and everyone throws it around too easily, I think sometimes, but maybe some cancer risks, but we're not sure about any of that yet. Yeah. We know that if we've got the choice of ingesting it or not, then take the not option. Yes. That seems to be better. So Sweden and Germany are doing some work on trying to get some PFAS regulations in place and also some remediation. So there's a fair bit of work going on for this. But watch this space. I think we're going to see a lot more development, and I think we're going to see more problems before we see the solutions. But the solutions will eventually come.
With ChatGPT launching an AI revolution 2 years ago, could you guess when the very first chatbot was developed? If you answered 20 years ago, you'd be wrong. If you guessed the 90s, you'd still be way off, and the 90s was more than 20 years ago, just by the way. It'll probably surprise you to discover that the first chatbot was developed in the 60s and probably provided inspiration for the cult classic 2001 Space Odyssey. Matt, someone has resuscitated this granddaddy of the AI world, for better or for worse.
And I've got no proof to say that Joseph Weizenbaum, who developed this particular chatbot at MIT, was basing it on some work from Alan Turing, but I'm guessing it would have been. So Alan Turing back in 1950 released a paper called Computing, Machinery and Intelligence. So he was trying to work out when could you say a machine had intelligence. And he had this thought experiment where he said, let's play the imitation game. And so the idea was this: a human interrogator interacts with two unseen participants through only written communication. So you can only type on a keyboard and look at the answers on a screen. One is interrogating as a human, the other one is a machine. And the interrogator, if I'm the interrogator, my job is to determine which of the answers I get back is the machine and which is the human. So I look at answer A and answer B. Answer A, oh no, that's definitely the computer giving me back that. If I can't get it right any more than a guess, any more than, say, a 50-50 ratio, then Turing said that machine was said to be thinking or to have intelligence. Now, the really tricky part about all of that is what is thinking, what is intelligence, and it's hard to define that. Yeah. But if you're getting answers back that look and sound like a human, then is that computer thinking like a human?
But just consider that Einstein suggested that it was some ridiculously small percentage, like 0.001% of humans will have an original thought. Yeah, I wonder how you tell. I mean, we're all sort of programmed to a degree, aren't we?
Yeah, and we learn from past experiences and we use that to come up with our new thoughts and ideas coming forward, which is what generative AI does. It takes all of that past experience, except it has the advantage of having the internet in its brain, whereas you and I don't have that. Yeah. So that was Turing's idea. Get to the mid-60s, so around 65, and Joseph Weizenbaum wrote ELIZA. Now, he called it ELIZA based on Eliza Doolittle from George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion.
Rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain.
That's the one. So obviously he had some fascination there. It made sense from that perspective, but obviously that was for him a bit of a joke and just called it ELIZA, wrote a bit of code, and I've watched some of the answers they got back from that, and it looked like some pretty basic answers and a basic conversation that you're having with it. You wouldn't have thought, as you said, that all of this AI stuff started back in the mid-60s. You think it started a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
But not the mid-60s. So what's happened now is they've actually found the original code because people knew about this ELIZA. Joseph's long gone, and people had a bit of a discussion about it, but gee, it'd be fascinating to find that. During COVID, a lot of work was done in just archiving work at various different universities, and they stumbled across some code that looked like it might have been the original. It wasn't quite the original, but they went back a bit further and they found the original, but it had some bits of corrupted code in there, so they then reconstructed that. So they've now got to the point where they say, here is the original 1965 code for ELIZA. They're hopefully going to make it public where you can actually go and interact with it just to see.
But this is
how
really
far
just
come.
nostalgia. Yeah,
absolutely right. It's all about seeing where we came from to get to where we are
I
now.
wonder if we can learn anything from it, but yeah.
Look, quite possible. I mean, even Weizenbaum said he was a bit sceptical about AI, and he was worried about the impact that it would have on society and the fact that you really didn't have empathy from this AI tool. It could look and sound like a sentient being, but it didn't really have the empathy that you would hope that a human would have.
I reckon you just got to watch 2001 Space Odyssey. Now, that was made in the late 60s, I think about 68, yeah. And so, that computer that... very, very cold in its language, talking to the lead astronaut there.
And see, one of the things is that researchers do often talk about that, and they say they're worried that a chatbot, an AI tool might appear sentient, but inherently they don't have feelings. But gee, I know lots of people I speak to that they appear sentient, but inherently they don't have a lot of feeling
as well. Yeah, they need some reprogramming.
That's right. But it is fascinating. So when they hopefully make this public, which I hope they do. They said it does crash a bit. It's got a few errors in the code. You can understand that from a long time ago and really the first bit of code to do this. But that's their aim, is to make it public so people can actually go and look at what it was originally and then can compare that to Copilot or ChatGPT and see just how far we've come or how far we regressed. I'm not sure which is the right way.
And did you realise it's 1 year since the first Neuralink brain chip was implanted? But installing chips in brains has been happening for a little while. In fact, at least 42 people have undergone this procedure since the March of 2023, as I understand. And one of these people has been flying drones using his thoughts alone. Matt, this is not out of the Marvel universe, is it?
No, the
bit
first
of telekinesis.
Well, the first ones that we saw when people were using the brain-computer interface, the BCI, they were doing some really basic things: move mouse up, move mouse down. So they were pretty distinct thoughts. You're thinking about that, and you're going, right, I want to move the mouse up. You want to move the mouse up, and the mouse would move up the screen. So that's fantastic. It's a bit more complicated when you start to get to the stage when you can fly a drone. Now, at this stage, just to make it clear for everyone, it was a virtual drone, so it was a drone on a screen, but you're basically playing a computer game if you like. Yeah. But the controls were identical to a real drone. So the person
may as well have been a real drone.
May as well have been, exactly right. So the person doing it was a bit of an aviation enthusiast and had a spinal cord injury, so they talked about this process with him, and he said, look, I'd love to be able to fly a drone. I love the idea of drones, love to be able to fly it, but of course I can't because he's a quadriplegic. Or in the article that I read about it, they said he had tetraplegia. I haven't heard the term tetraplegia, so I looked it up. It's the same as quadriplegia.
Yeah, right, okay. So someone who didn't know the word quadriplegia had made up their own term.
That's right.
Okay.
So essentially hasn't got great use of his arms or legs. So the spinal cord injury probably happened up around the top part of his spinal cord, and so he's not able to do much with his arms and legs, but he's still got a good brain, a good functioning brain.
Yeah, right.
And so this BCI that was installed, 192 electrodes were implanted in the brain's hand motion area. So in essence, it was almost as if he was using his hand on a drone control to fly the drone. Wow. Fascinating, isn't it? So it maneuvered the virtual drone through a complex obstacle course. So that was this whole virtual environment, and then there's nothing stopping you from doing that out in the real world.
Goodness me.
This is step one. Obviously, we don't want to say all the tetraplegics of the world unite to fly drones. Let's give them better quality of life. So rather than have someone move you in a wheelchair, then let's think about where your wheelchair wants to go.
So if you can control a drone, then you can control a wheelchair. You can do a lot of other things.
And why not? If we keep developing this, move a mouse, sure, that's pretty basic. But then if you can start to type, or you might be able to have your voice control to use things as well and to have things happening on screen. So if you can get a mouse and then be able to talk to a computer, you can be a much more useful member of society and feel like you're making some sort of contribution. So it's certainly, to me, something where flying a drone is good fun, but in 5 years' time, there'll be lots of people out there being incredibly useful and feeling much better about themselves because they're able to use their brain, which is functioning to do a whole range of physical things. So it's a scary world, isn't it?
It's an amazing world. And just like that, our lolly bag is empty, but for a few sprinkles and some empty wrappers to serve as a happy little reminder. Thanks for another sweet tech talk, Matt.
Well, I'm going to go and have a bit more of a play with TikTok now. I mightn't have much longer left with it, although there's been no threats to Australia at this stage. I want to clarify that. No threats to Australia, but if America bans it, who knows what might happen after that. So, yeah, so I'll go and do that while I'm playing the piano, I think.
Well, I'm going to go and develop some new dance moves for myself so I can stay one step ahead of those robots.
Can we get a BCI to teach us how to dance properly? That'd be the go.
All right. You've been listening to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's the one that smells like gadgets and tastes like the future, so you know it's good for you. And I'm your host, James Eddy. Thank you for tuning in once again. We hope you've enjoyed this show as much as we enjoy putting it together, so share the love and bring a friend along. Catch you again in another week's time.